Yeah, if you're somebody who has previously attended the Transition Manager, welcome back. If not, if you are somebody who's interested, welcome. Hopefully what we can do today is tell you a little bit about Transition Manager Academy, and to hopefully give you a sense of the experience of what it's like to be on Transition Manager Academy. Certainly if you're on one of my modules, because if you've come here expecting me to spend an hour and a half teaching you stuff, then you're going to be a little bit disappointed, because I've got some things to share with you, certainly, but I'm going to ask you questions and I'm looking for people to participate. And that's a bit of the style that we do. At the level that we teach, it's not about just telling you what to do, it's about stimulating your mind, stimulating your creativity, and asking you to think for yourself, to research for yourself, and giving you the encouragement to broaden your knowledge of Transition Manager activities. So the audience for TMA, I'll call it TMA for short because it's easier to say. We're looking for current and prospective leaders of transition and transformation projects and programs. We're looking at team members who want to understand what kind of role they might play in a transition management program and what contributions they can make towards transformation success. We're looking at project managers, team members of shared services and business process outsourcing sector, or anyone involved in strategic projects and programs. And what we're trying to do is to help prepare you for the management and coordination of transition and transformation initiatives. We want you to gain skills and competencies in managing global projects, and particularly we're focused on organisational and service transition. We want to provide you with an understanding of the theory and practice of leadership to enable the delivery of sustained value of changes, and that's really important. It's about making sure that transition and change programs that you're involved with not only deliver change, but the value from that change is established and it's maintained and sustained. We want to help project managers to become change leaders. Now, I'm not sure if Kosha goes into what we mean by transition, but we mean everything associated with a change, not just the external activities, so build a new office, develop a new product, or even company culture change, but we're looking at the internal changes as well. When we do transition programs, something is different and we expect people to behave differently. And I guess you all know that we are creatures of habit, and it takes a long while for us to learn the habits that make us who we are. So the transition part of what we look at is what we have to do to enable people to change their behaviours as well. So it's the external change and it's the internal change as well. And it's that internal change that makes behaviours different that actually delivers the value. And I hope that makes sense. By the way, if you have any questions at all, feel free to speak up. That would be lovely. I like an interactive session. Or you can pop them into the chat, and Kasia, if you could monitor the chat and see if anyone pops in a question, let me know, and we can answer them. This is the program structure. We've divided it into 6 broad themes. Strategic management, so this is about the sort of the big helicopter view of the business. Okay, what is it we need to do, when and where and how do we need to do it? And it's also the leadership level of transition programs. There are 3 modules looking at technical project management. So if you don't have a background in project management, you will pick up some of the basic project management skills, although it does help if you have some experience. We use the PMI Project Management Body of Knowledge, PMBOK guide and framework as a basis for the course. So we look at basic project management, we look at project agile management, and we look at project risk management as well. These are basic project management skills. We have a couple of modules that are about working with others. A module that I lead on communication and team management. And we have a module on virtual and multicultural team management. So in other words, managing across countries and managing across cultures. We have some modules on enabling solutions and creativity, facilitation skills, presentation skills, visual thinking and creative problem solving. And we have some modules which we call developing and influencing. This is about another aspect of working with others, but this is about working with your teams and working with your stakeholders. So module 8, again, which I deliver, is mentoring and coaching. So this is the leader as coach, how you work with individual people and how you work with your teams, and negotiations for project success. And then at the end of the course, which runs throughout the year, there is a final project that you have to do, up to it's either 10 or 20,000 words, I can't remember. But we encourage you to think of a project at the beginning of the course which is related to your work if possible. But your project will present what you have learned and is your basis for showing us how you have developed as transition program leaders throughout the course. Anyone got any questions on that? Okay, these fine people are the lecturers who will be working with you. I've had my hair cut since that picture was taken. We have Gosha and Shemek there. We have Hannah, who is below Gosha. And we have some people that I don't know. Shemek, if you want to chip in, who else have we got on the picture there?
Sure, of course. So next to myself is Agnieszka. She's expert in lean and project management with us. On the bottom left, we do have Michał Rączka, director from mBank, experienced IT and project leader. We do have Ania with the notebook. She's visual trainer and coach. And we do have Jerzy that's driving the trees and innovation part of the workshops.
Thanks, Shemek. I may call on you again later. So we have quite a broad team and a broad experience that allows us to give you not only the best theory, but also some really good practice-based practical knowledge as well. Why is TMA the best choice? It's the only project management training and program based on the PMI Talent Triangle. And as it says here, you get both a set of tools and practices to run complex projects and programs. And it's very much a personal transition as well for you. It's not just about learning tools and practices, but we work with you to help you to start thinking about yourself as leaders and the ways in which you can personally develop. One of our former students has said, as you can see there, I joined the program to open the door, but the transition manager at Academy opened my eyes. And that's very much what we try to do. It will guide you through an exploration of what it means to be a leader of others for processes of significant transitional change in our volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous world. And that's really important because it's a very fast moving world, and as the last 2 or 3 years have shown us, we never know what's around the corner and what impact on our ability to transition successfully within business. So we try and explore the skills and the knowledge that you will need to have to manage in that uncertain world. Central to our teaching is a belief in the value of curiosity as a leader. This is something I very much believe in. The model of leadership that we work with is not one where the leader is the person who controls, the leader is the person who tells everyone else what to do. We believe the job of the leader is to enable others to give of their best and to create a situation where the success of the program is inevitable. And we think the best way of doing that is to be a leader who has humility, authenticity, but also curiosity. Okay. It's all about asking questions and continuous learning. And as a leader, we expect you to feel comfortable with not knowing. And sometimes, even if you do know, pretending you don't know, because what you're looking to do is to help your team to develop themselves. So this state of curiosity, this not knowing state, is something that we're very big on, and flows throughout the course. And here we are again. Finley agrees with me. Also, it's a chance to exchange experience and observation with an international group of students from diverse backgrounds. We've run 4 TMA courses so far over the last 4 years. All of them have had some participation from outside of Poland, and every single one of them has said that the members learned as much from each other as they learned from us. So it's a great forum for exchanging ideas, for networking and building your contacts. And last but not least, as we have learned over the last 2 years, we can run the program virtually if necessary. We ran the last program, I think, almost entirely virtually. So it's not going to get impacted by anything that's happening in the external world. Ideally, we're in the room with you at the university, but we can run it virtually as well. And there are a couple of recommendations there from people who have been on the course before. Not only changed my professional life, but given it a new meaning. I think the Academy has made me a better person internally, calm, and again, joyfully curious. See, they learned the lesson of curiosity. Be aware, however, that you will not expect what standard postgraduate studies bring. Mind-blowing topics, interactive classes, great participants. You will undertake a transition of oneself, highly recommended. And we have a lot more of those. It is a great learning experience, and it's a learning experience for us as tutors as well. We learn as much from you as course members. We present through as AgilePMO, it's the company that Gosha leads, which is a PMI authorised training organisation. And there are you can claim personal development units as part of your ongoing professional development by attending the course. So has anyone got any questions on that? So that's really an introduction to TMA itself and who we are in presenting it. Any questions? Why don't I move on then?
Yes. Yes, may I have a question?
Of course you can, yes.
Yes, thank you. I am wondering because I was very curious about the program, and thank you for elaborating what is inside. I would like to share my background and trying to understand should I participate or not, and to what extent I can learn something new. Of course, I can always learn something new. That's obvious, but I am thinking about is that the place also for me, because I've been we are working with the SAFE methodology, so scaled agile methodology at my work. We are driving projects like that, also in the old methodology, like a waterfall. Plus, I also lead the team, quite big teams, as also leading leaders. So having the background with the coaching and all those stuff and leading, let's say, skills, I am wondering what kind of other things I can learn from this academy. Maybe you had participants like me before, and then what was the feedback after that, after the studies.
Okay, let me just answer that briefly, and then if Shemek or Gosha, if we can hear you, want to come in as well. Thank you for asking the question, because I suspect it's not just you that have that question. I think the question, am I right for the academy and is the academy right for me, is one that most people on this call will have. So I think one thing is, what I might ask you to do is to hang on to that question for a bit, because what I'm going to do when we run through the next section, the topic we've chosen is not specifically one that we've addressed before at Transition Manager Academy. It's something that I'm interested in, and I believe Gosha is also interested in. And one thing we do is we're continually updating the course content, because we read a lot, we research a lot, we gain experience as the teaching team, and when we find something that we think is new and interesting, we try and bring it into the course. The way I've set this up is that I'm going to run this session kind of in the way that we would run the academy. So there is some information, but what I'm looking for is to promote discussion and for sharing of experience. So I'm going to be asking a lot of questions as well. Now, depending on how active everyone on the call is, it's either going to be a great experience or we're going to have a lot of silence. But that's okay, because I'm quite good with silence, so I'm very patient. But what I hope you will get a sense of is that you will learn something new, and even if you haven't learned something new, maybe you've been able to share something with others, but the act of you sharing your knowledge helps to broaden that knowledge and embed it within a greater level of understanding. So we've had a range of people on the course, from very, very experienced senior transition program managers to very inexperienced project workers, and to some people who don't run projects, but they sponsor projects and they're keen to understand. And we've generally, I think, been able to find something for everyone. And that's good. When you have a broad range of experience in the room, as I said, it's not just us teaching you, it's everyone teaching everyone else, and that sharing of experience is really important. So I don't know specifically what, but I'm certain that there will be things for you to learn. I'm also certain that the knowledge that you bring with you will be different from the knowledge that others on the course have, and in bringing that with you, you will enrich their experience in the way that they will also enrich yours. Gosha or Shemek, anything you want to add to that?
Maybe I can, if you can hear me. Leadership is a journey. So, and what we bring here, it's something very new concept. As Mike mentioned, we experience, we feel, we read, and we introduce it. So like teaming, we introduced to Poland teaming. Before now, I know, for example, Mariusz Hrabko and other leaders, agile leaders, use it. So I think Professor Obenk's model as well, it's something Mike, you brought to Poland. Thinking environment, all these concepts. So I'm learning a lot every year. Every year I learn something new, quite a lot of new things. So I think it's, even if we know quite a lot, we can learn other concepts and we can share it and we can bring something and bring and gain something. So
yeah. So I mean, Gosha's very nicely kind of covered a lot of what I'm going to be showing you. What we do is we kind of share with you the best things we find out there in transition management. And in my talk, I'm going to reference 3 or 4 different models that are applicable to different aspects of transition management. And they come from respected authors or respected participants in transition management programs. So, you know, this is not our thinking. You know, what we do is we find these sources of information, we understand them, we learn them and understand them, and then we share them with you and we experience them together. So in my talk in a minute, you're going to see reference to the thinking environment from Nancy Klein. You're going to see the reference to teaming, Amy Edmondson. You're going to see reference to a couple of models from a guy called Eddie Obeng, who I find really exciting in the way he allows us to work within a volatile and uncertain world. So I think let's go through the next section, and it's going to be a little bit like the kind of style with which we encourage learning on TMA. And then perhaps at the end of that, if I can ask you, Magda, to let me know what your thoughts are. Did you find that interesting? Did you find anything new in there? Did it stimulate some thinking? And if you have any that question still, we can try and answer it later on. Would that work for you?
Perfect. Thanks.
Thank you. Shemek, anything from you before I move on?
I think you covered everything, so we can move forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Shemek. Okay, so let's move into this then. Let me just share my screen. I think I've got the yes. Right, there we go. So welcome to the bit I was going to do now. So first of all, a little bit about me. My name is Mike Rawlins. I am from and in England at the moment. Gosha and I met, 7 or 8 years ago now, something like that, isn't it? At a project management conference. And Gosha invited me to come and speak at New Trends in Project Management in Gdańsk, I think was the first conference I came to, and I've been coming back to Poland ever since. I love coming to Poland. I've missed it this last 2 years, and I'm hoping, with my fingers crossed, to be able to come over again soon. I'm an experienced project and program and business manager, and over the years as a manager, my style adapted to become very much about being people focused. I now work as occasionally as a coach, and my style of leadership was always very much a coaching style of leadership. So on the course, I cover those modules which are about coaching and developing others. The leader as coach, teaming and team building and communication, and a module on leadership itself. So what we're going to look at today, some of you may or may not have heard of the slow movement. If you've heard of it, can you just pop a yes into the chat and we'll see how many people are aware of it. It's something that I kind of heard of a little bit from time to time. I'd seen articles occasionally, but it really wasn't on my mind much. I'm going to tell you a slow story first. So I have a friend who is a course director and director of education at Exeter University in the psychology department. And she asked me 2 years ago if for her first year undergraduates, one of the modules they do, one of the lessons they do is on communications, and she knew that I do communications through TMA. And she gets guest lecturers in, so she said, Mike, would you come down and would you give the talk on communications? And I said, yeah, that would be great. I'd love to do that. Yeah. And I think the first year it wasn't come down. We did it over Zoom because we were in the middle of lockdown. But at the end of last year, early December, I went down to Exeter to do the talk again. And she said to me when I got down there, she said, one of her colleagues also had a guest lecturer staying, and we were planning to go out for dinner. Would that be okay? I went, yeah, that'd be lovely. I'd like meeting new people. So we went into Exeter and we went to a really nice tapas bar and had some great food. And the guy who came along was a guy called Carl Honore. I'd not heard of him at all. I didn't know who he was. I just knew he was a guest lecturer. But he was charming and engaging. And we had a fantastic evening, lots of interesting talk. We got on really well together. And it turns out that Carl Honore is a world-renowned author. And his book, In Praise of Slow, is a very well-known book and one that's quite very influential in the slow movement. He didn't start the slow movement, but he really bought into it, and he's been promoting it and pushing it as across a range of backgrounds for some years now. And so I said to him, can you tell me a little about the slow movement, and in particular, how can we bring slow into business when it's a fast changing world? And he was like, well, you need to come to my talk tomorrow. Okay, I won't ask any more. But what I noticed about him was that he was talking to my friend's colleague who was looking after him the next day, and she said, "Okay, well, I'll pick you up about 9:30, and then we'll get into the university, and I'll take you to the room." And he went, "Oh, hold on a minute. I'm going to have an hour walk at 9:30. So can you pick me up at 10:30? And when you get there, if you could take me to the room, and I'd like to be left on my own there for 30 minutes, because I'm just going to make sure everything's set up, and then I'm just going to sit quietly and gather my thoughts. And then when I've done that, if you have people you want me to meet, I'll come and meet them." And what I realized was that he lived what he was talking about. He would not be rushed into anything. He took his time. He took, he lived according to the concepts of slow that he was promoting, and it really meant something to him. And I thought, well, this is interesting. I need to find out more about this. So I bought the book, and there's a lot in there about the background and the history of the slow movement. It originally started as a movement around slow food in Italy, and it was a reaction to McDonald's opening a fast food restaurant near the Spanish Steps in Rome. And people said, well, no, this is not right. This is not what we're about as a culture. And so a movement around slow food began, and this is way back in, it's about probably 20 years ago, I think. But gradually the ideas of slow spread into other areas as well. His story is that his first visit to Italy was as a young student, and he just backpacked around Italy. And one day he was on the outskirts of Rome, and the bus didn't turn up, and he had 2 hours to wait. So he just lay on his back and stared at the clouds, put his iPod on, or whatever he was listening to at the time, and listened to music. 20 years later, he's back in Rome, and he's rushing it through the airport with his time manager in one hand and his bag over his shoulder, and he's on the phone planning his schedule and doing about 5 things at once, rushing to get the plane. And he spotted a book which was called 1 Minute Fairy Stories. And he stopped to look at this, and the idea was, the plug for the book was, you're all busy parents, and your children want you to read them stories, but you haven't got time to read them stories. So we've condensed all of the fairy stories in the world into 1 minute versions. So you can give your child a 1 minute story, get them off to bed, and then go and do whatever else you were going to do. And he thought, what are we doing? You know, what are we doing? Have we become so much slaves to the clock that even the pleasure of spending time with our children has to be shortened and made more efficient? And that's what got him into the slow movement. In the book, I'm not going to go through all of the book, obviously, but I encourage you, if you're interested, to get hold of it and read it. What he talks about is how over history, we used to be governed by natural cycles. You know, the cycles of seasons, sunrise and sunset, and life moved at a pace that fitted the surroundings. And the invention of mechanical clocks allowed us to understand more about time, and we started to be driven by time. So curfews would be introduced, or times for prayers, or the Industrial Revolution came along, and efficiency and time and motion, Taylor studies in America. How long could it take one worker to do one piece of work? Okay, that's how long it's going to take everyone. Workforce being paid by the hour rather than by the output. Suddenly time is money, and we need to do more with the time we have. Until we get to a point where we are controlled by time rather than us controlling time. And he talks about in the book how the benefits that come from slow are manifold. The mental health benefits, physical health benefits, and actually benefits in terms of what we do, because those of you who work on projects, particularly projects that have been very complex or run to tight timescales, will know many projects run over time. And they run over time because we rush at things and we get things wrong. And actually slowing down a little bit in some ways might allow us to speed up. The slow movement is everywhere. Slow food, slow cities. There are cities that are dedicating themselves to the slow movement by doing things like banning supermarkets from within certain areas, promoting farmers markets, pedestrian only areas, lots of ways in which they promote slow. Slow is coming into business, and we'll talk a bit about how that works in a minute. Even slow sex. Sting, if you remember, the rock star, got himself into trouble a few years ago by talking about tantric sex, taking his time, and it's kind of haunted him ever since. But there are lots of ways in which slow is better. So I thought to myself, is there a slow version of transition and change management? And if there is, what does it look like? Now, I don't have the answer. This is a question. Remember curiosity? This is a question I've only recently asked myself. And to be honest, the only thinking I've really done about it is the thinking I've done to pull this together. So this is not me telling you something I know, but the posing of interesting questions and the motivation to try and answer them is one of the things we try and promote through TMA. So in what ways can slow support transition management or change management or complex project management? So before I go on, has anyone got any thought? Anyone want to speak up and offer some suggestions as ways in which you think slow, given that we don't really understand what slow is at the moment, but any ideas that you have before I move on and tell you some of mine? Either speak up or pop them in the chat. Gosha, you must have some thoughts.
I've already put them. I put slow food and slow jogging. I'm really enjoying slow jogging.
I'm really good at slow jogging. I don't think I've got any other choice though, to be honest. I'm not. What is it about slow jogging that you like?
It's about that it's not too fast and not too slow. So it's something between the jogging and the walk. So you still have enough time for the reflection because you are not, you can breathe properly. So that's something I like a lot. So
okay. So if I can kind of feed back to you, paraphrase what I've just heard, for you, jogging is partly about a physical health activity and partly about a mental well-being activity. So from your jogging, you want some exercise, but you also want time to reflect. Okay.
Yeah.
And slow jogging allows you to move at a pace that allows you to do the things that you want to do. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's really what the slow movement is about. It's been not being a slave to a clock, not thinking everything has to be done fast, but doing things at the right pace. And in some circumstances, fast might be the right pace, but it's about not having everything on full speed as a natural default. It's thinking about what's the right pace to move at and how do we do that. So my thinking was this. Okay, this is where I've done it already. So if we think about slow transition management, and I've put a version of the change curve there. Some of you will be familiar with that, the idea that whenever we introduce a change, there are stages that organizations and people go through, which involve kind of the shock of disruption, a reaction against that disruption, the beginnings of acceptance, rebuilding and gathering a commitment. Now that's a curve and it takes time. So in transition and change, we're used to the idea that it doesn't happen overnight. We're used to the idea that some time is needed. So the real question is how much time and how do you make the best use of that time? So when I was thinking about where could we apply slow and why, I've just picked a few of the things that I look at in my modules for transition management. So I'm thinking about how can slow thinking, the slow principles, help us deal with complexity, uncertainty and volatility. In what ways can the principles of slow help us to enable creativity and thinking and better decision making in transition management? I was thinking, in what ways can slow thinking help us to create psychological safety within teams, and why would we want to do that? And what can we learn from the slow movement about different cultures if we're working on global projects? And in what way does the principles of slow help us with people-focused leadership? So this is not the answer, but this is just my thinking based upon those things that interest me in transition management. And what that's going to allow me to do is show you some of the models that we use as well. I just noticed some comments in the chat room. Carolina, for me, slow is connected to mindfulness, being in the moment. That's very much so, yes. I like that a lot. And it's interesting to ask the question, why might being in the moment be important for transition management? Carolina, I don't know if you're willing to switch your mic on and maybe say something about, for you, why might mindfulness and being in the moment be a useful skill to have in a transition change program?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Yeah, I think it's about the fact, the environment we are currently in, and, everything is so fast and we are moving from one task to another. That slow, living in the slow and being mindful, let's say during a meeting or during working through some problem you have as part of the project, might allow you to be more creative and come up with some solutions more efficiently than if you're, skipping through different things at a time. This is something I struggle with a lot, yeah. So I'm in the meeting on one topic, trying to solve some issues, but at the same time, I'm trying to think about a million other things, yeah. So I think if we allow ourselves to stop and think and maybe spend some more time on one thing, at the end, we will be more efficient. I think that's how I look at it, yeah. And I know that it works like this, but probably the biggest challenge is how to do it, how to put it in practice.
Indeed, and the answer is I don't know. It's going to be different in every circumstance. You're right. I mean, when I read the book, there's nothing in the book that I read and thought, well, that's groundbreaking. I never thought of that. Everything in the book seems sensible. But what we know is that there are so many pressures upon us, some of them externally applied, our sponsors. How many of you have been on projects where you do the project planning phase and you develop the brief, and the brief comes back and says, yeah, we think this is going to be a 3-year program and it's going to cost whatever it's going to cost. And the answer comes back, yeah, well, we can't really afford 3 years. Can you do it in 2, or can you do it in 1? And even in an agile world, agile itself, I think, was a response to those kind of things that take too long to do. We haven't got long. Agile's approach to this, which I think is a slow approach, says if we've only got a certain amount of time, what can we usefully do within that time? And this has only just occurred to me, so thank you for the prompt. But in as much as a very simple way of thinking about agile processes is we have a certain amount of time, what can we usefully and sensibly and efficiently do within that time? That is about moving at the appropriate speed to do a good job, which is exactly the principle of slow. So it's one thing for us to think about and maybe investigate is what are the parallels between the principles and guiding practices of the slow movement and the principles and practices of agile, and where they are similar, what can we learn from each other? But yes, it's hard to do because there are external pressures, the plan, the need to realize value, deadlines coming up, And there are internal pressures that we apply to ourselves as well. I certainly do, and I'm sure many of you on the call do, around, the need to be seen to be busy, the need to be seen to be moving at pace. Otherwise, what are we doing? We create cultures which are driven by the need to meet deadlines. And what the slow movement says is think again. Think about not just the speed, but also the value and what you can achieve. And it's that mindfulness thing, okay? Being in the moment. What pace is right for what you have to do, and how can you make sure you achieve that pace? And if you look at the story I told you, when Carl was being spoken to by my friend's colleague who said, okay, here's the timetable I've got for you, it would have been really easy for him to go, oh, okay then, we'll do that. But what he actually did was very calmly and very politely, but very firmly said, no, this is how we're going to do it. The job will still get done. I will still give my lecture. You will still hear what I have to say, but we're going to do it in this way because this is the best way and the best pace for me to do what I'm going to do tomorrow. So it's a bit about learning what works and then having the skills and capabilities and confidence to then explain to others why that needs to be. Małgorzata says, for me, it's following the process, trusting it and observing with eyes wide open. Yes, yeah. So I think one of the things about the slow I got from the book on the slow movement is about when you move at the right pace, it allows you to pay attention to what's happening around you. It's eyes wide open and to react to what's around you and to learn from what's around you. Think of all the things we miss because we're too busy being busy. And it's making me think of the circular time perspective. That's interesting. Małgorzata, would you like to come on and explain what you mean by the circular time perspective, if that's okay?
Yeah, sure. In the cross-cultural psychology, when you have a look at different cultures, you do also share them having a certain time perspective. And as we in Europe has a linear time perspective, for example, in South America, there's a circular time perspective. And it makes me think of an example. If we are in rush hours and we want to reach a meeting, we just take a bus and we go as quick as we want. We know exactly when the bus leaves because there's a timetable for it. But in the circular cultures, the bus leaves when it's full.
Yeah.
Which, well, this makes so much sense for me. Obviously, you cannot use it everywhere. And you do have to have your eyes wide open, but it really makes sense sometimes.
Yeah.
It makes, I think of living with the natural processes, and it's more natural. It's giving it's given the space to look at everything with more accuracy. I
Yeah.
just like.
No, thank you. That's a really great contribution. You actually reminded me. I was reading the book on the train yesterday afternoon, and he does talk about circular time in the book, and about the idea that if you go far enough into the future, time kind of circles back in itself, and the circumstances of the past are there as well. So it's a belief, and the belief says if you just wait long enough, the right thing will happen. One of the things I'm going to pick up on is other cultures' approaches to time a bit later on, and that's something we look at within Hannah does a module on cross-cultural working, and it comes up in that. So that's a really good reference. But just imagine if we were picked as a team now to go to a circular time culture with our linear time perspective, and we started to try and introduce our plans and get people working in a particular way, and just wondered why we couldn't get them to respond in the way we expect the team to respond. If we didn't have that understanding of how is time perceived and what's important here and what's the right pace for this culture, we'd get into all kinds of problems. You know, our plans would fail very quickly, and it would look like we're not doing a good job. Well, actually, what we're not doing is paying attention to what's around us and what is the right pace. So that's a really great example. Thank you for introducing that. I'm just going to just drop off just for a second. I've got to go and turn a light on because, although I'm an hour behind you, it's starting to get dark here. So let me just turn the light on for a second. That's better. I can see myself now. Okay, so let's move on. So the first model I want to introduce that we teach on the course, and I'm checking time, by the way, while I'm doing this. One of the things I talk about is in the leadership module. One of the problems we have is the world is complex and it's fast changing. It's volatile and it's uncertain. And as companies and businesses are being asked to respond quickly and to do ever new and innovative things, how do you do that? And a model I came across, which really worked for me, is by a guy called Eddie Obeng. He's written a lot on project management and talks a lot on project management. This book in particular is one that I refer to a lot in the course, All Change, the Project Leader's Secret Handbook. And there are lots of good things in there, but one of them is the way he thinks about, and it's like how I was thinking about things. What kind of project do we have here? And one of his models, he says, you can think about two things. Okay, when you're looking at the work you have to do. How well do we know what we have to do? And how well do we know how to do it? And those are two very simple questions, but they're quite hard to answer. So there are some projects where you've done them time and time again, you know how to. So if you think about a construction project, for example, you know, a simple construction project for an office block. If you're a construction company, you've built office blocks many times, and the specification is very clear. If you're lucky, you know, we want it to be here. We want this number of people. It's going to house that type of equipment. So you know what you have to do, and you know how to do it. That's what is kind of traditional, very standard project management. We can have a plan because we know what the activities are and we know how they're going to work out and we can do them. And he calls those kind of projects painting by numbers. There are some projects where you have to do something, but you're not entirely certain what, but you know how to do it. So a really good, and he calls these a quest. Sorry, you know what to do. You're clear on what to do. No, sorry, I apologise. You know you have to do something, but you know how to do it, but you're not what. So the virus is a really good example of this. Okay, 2 years ago, we knew we have to develop a vaccination to the virus. And whatever your views are, whether vaccinations are a good thing or not, it's been part of the toolkit against the COVID virus. Pharmaceutical companies know how to make vaccinations. They have processes in place. They don't always know what the outcome is going to be, but they know how to do it. So that's called making a movie. In that, you know, people who make films, they know the process of making movies. They don't necessarily know what the movie they're going to make is. And often when they start a movie, they'll start with a particular story, but it will change as they go through. But they're going through a process that they've done really well. And so those kind of things, you know how to do it, but you don't know what you have to do. So there's a certain level of uncertainty there. Another type is where you know what you have to do, but you don't know how to do it. And he calls those requests. So what you have to do is you have to work out, to get this outcome, what's the best way of doing this. And then the worst kind of projects are where you know you have to do something, but you don't quite know what and you don't know how. So an example of that would be if you're a company and there's a change in the marketplace. So your competitor brings in a new product, and suddenly your product is no longer needed. You know you have to do something different, but you don't quite know what you have to do. You don't know, do you need to replicate their project? Do you need to find a new product yourself? And you don't quite, because you don't know what to do, you don't know how to do it. And he calls those projects working in the fog. Now, most of the time, people don't recognize that they're on a quest or making a movie or in a fog. It's very easy to think that we know what we have to do and we know how to do it. And that's often, I find, the attitude of sponsors, which is why sponsors like us to do detailed plans and come up with firm budgets, and then they hold us to those plans and budgets. And when you have big complex projects, the biggest example I know of over here in the UK is the Crossrail project in London, which is currently 3 or 4 years overdue and about 2 or 3 times the original budget, because everyone thought it was just another construction project. They didn't realise that there were so many uncertainties they would have to deal with. So we as transition leaders, we have to work in a world where we're expected to provide certainty in an uncertain world. And what Eddie Obeng's model allows you to do is to have a process for dealing with that. What he does say is if you, first of all, he gives you some tools and techniques for knowing what kind of project you're running. Are you on a quest? Are you in the fog? Are you making a movie? Or are you lucky and is it a painting by numbers project? And what he then says is, depending on the type of project, you have to do certain things first. Most often what we do on projects when we're in the planning, we do a plan, we do a detailed plan, we do a detailed budget, we get sanctioned for our plan and for our budget, and then we go and try and do the job. What he says is, actually, no, you need to spend a bit of time doing other things. So if you are, maybe you need to spend time working on your people. So if you're on a quest, what you need is a team that's capable of creative thinking, of research, of finding out what they're going to need to do. So you need to develop your people to be able to do that task. So your first focus is in your people within your team. Your second focus is on your stakeholders, because you want them to keep them satisfied while you are taking the time, and note that you are taking the time to work out what you have to do or how you have to do it. And that's particularly important if you're in the fog. If you are making a movie, so you have a proven process, your people know what they're doing, but you still need to take some time to go through the process to work out where you're going. So there you have to focus on your stakeholders. You have to keep them happy, because remember, they're hungry for value to the business. They expect you to be able to build a plan and deliver to that plan. So stakeholder management becomes a really important aspect of what you're doing. We explore the model more fully, obviously, in the course, but the point I'm making is, for all of those segments in his model, and even for the painter by numbers one, the important thing is you need to take your time to do certain things. So the slow approach to uncertainty is, what do we know? What do we not know? How are we going to find out the answers to what we don't know? And how much time is it going to take us to do that? And let's take that time and do all the things that we need to do to give us that time to make it happen. And so things like stakeholder management of your sponsors, working with your team, working with the people who are going to be affected by the change, taking the right amount of time to do that becomes very important. And the slow principles give you the basis for influencing people who want to rush, explaining why it's better to take a bit longer now, because at the end of the day, we're going to get there quicker and more effectively and more efficiently. Does that make sense? Has anyone here been on a project which has been really difficult because of unrealistic expectations about speed of delivery. Pop it in the chat or speak up. Okay, so just moving on. So one area where the principles of SLOW apply to transition management is around dealing with uncertainty. One of the things we're looking to do, and this is kind of related to uncertainty as well, is when we're doing complex programs, we need to enable creativity, we need good decision making, and we need good thinking. So one of the Gosha has referred to this already. One of the books that we work with is, there are a series of books actually, but the first one is called Time to Think, and it's by an author called Nancy Klein. Now, what Nancy Klein says is that the quality of what we do is affected by our thinking. And so what we need to be doing with our teams is to encourage quality of thinking. And the way you do that is you create what she calls a thinking environment. And the book talks about what the thinking environment consists of. And there are a number of practices that you do, which is around the way in which you show respect for colleagues, the way in which you show appreciation for colleagues, the way in which you run meetings, giving everyone an equal voice, an equal time to speak. We use those qualities on TMA itself. At the beginning of the course, we ask participants to understand these qualities and to respect them. But it's also we teach them as part of transition management as well. And the key is in the title, it's time to think. So basically Nancy's message is, again, a slow approach to thinking, where you have complex problems or complex thinking needed. The way to get there is to give people the time and space and psychological safety to be able to take the time necessary to think and to make the right decisions. Gosha, I know you're a big fan of time to think. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm just discovering this. I mean, I'm trying to practice because I talk more than I listen. So for me, if you are interested in it, I have written 2 articles, one for Strefa PMI. So that's a kind of introduction to Nancy Klein thinking environment. And the second is about the 6 stages of the thinking, especially the first one, the most important. And I think it's something powerful. Just one simple question and you can open people to think and discover and change. Yeah? So I encourage you to explore it more, because for me, it's something I have written 2 books, Time to Think, and I've got this here. I've got this background. So More Time to Think. So I have written both of them. They are both written by Nancy. So it's something really, really powerful, my discovery last year. So I really recommend it.
And it's becoming a well-known technique. I'm currently doing a master's degree in songwriting, and one of the first things the tutors did was to tell us about this process they had for improving our thinking, and it was this. They called it something else, and I went to them afterwards and said, "You've read Nancy Klein, haven't you?" And they went, "Yeah, we have," and it works. But the point is, it's about, always it comes back to what's the right pace at which we have to move in order to do what we need to do. And when that pace is not as fast as we can, when it's not about urgency and busyness, we have to have the confidence to be able to push back and explain why a slower pace is a good pace. Actually, we need to have the confidence to satisfy ourselves what's the right pace, and then we need to have the confidence and the knowledge to be able to explain to people who want everything done yesterday why this is a better way of doing it. a lot of what we do in transition programs is about influencing and changing mindsets. And for me, the principles of the slow movement look like a lot of the things that we do in managing our stakeholders, in managing our teams, in managing those who are affected by the transition programs we run. It looks very much like the slow movement myself, which is why I'm absolutely certain I'm going to be bringing some of the slow principles into my teaching. The other thing on here, again, is another new one. As part of the MA that I'm doing, been reading about creativity and the work of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. It's taken me a long while to learn how to say that. And you may have come across him. He's the author who introduced the idea of flow. That's probably the thing he's best known for. And flow is about that state that you get into when you're embedded and engrossed in an activity, so that everything else disappears and time seems to stop and you just are able to work efficiently and effectively. Now, that doesn't just happen, and it certainly doesn't happen on busy projects if the phone's going every 5 minutes, or if you've got your project manager or your sponsor coming to you and saying, why haven't I had that plan that you promised me last Friday? And so the reason I've raised it here is, again, I think, a lot of what we teach on the course is around, the fact that as transition leaders, we have to create the environment for success, which means we have to be able to help others to understand that finding the right pace is really important, and then delivering the right pace. Two other models that we use, which are about people. Teaming, Gosha's referred to. So this is the work of Amy C. Edmondson. Amy Edmondson, and there are a number of Harvard Business Review articles that she's written. But basically, if you think of the idea of leadership, the verb associated with that, the thing that you do when you're a leader is you are leading. And so she's applied the same idea here, is when you're creating teams and when you're working in a team, what you are doing is teaming. So she has studied what leadership attributes are needed to make teaming effective. And there are 4 things that as a leader you need to do, and we teach this again on one of the modules. Good leaders have to be able to, it's all about learning, about the learning organization. And good leaders create a space where learning becomes part of what we do, and where failure is seen not as something bad, but as an inevitable part of learning. And the way you do, because people are attuned to avoid failure, it's seen as something bad. Actually, failure is an inevitable part of learning and creativity. One of the things I like is about, I think, Edison, when he invented the light bulb. Up until the point he found a formulation for the element that worked, he hadn't invented the light bulb, but he'd learned 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb. And all of those failures were an inevitable part of the process. So in teaming, what Amy talks about is 4 leadership attributes. First of all, she calls it framing for learning. So this is how, as a leader, you can present the situation to others, or allow others to think of a situation, not as we have failed to do this, but we have tried and we have learned this thing about how not to do it, and now we move on. It's about creating an environment where you can learn, where you can fail fast and move on and learn to succeed. So it's about the ability of a leader to take a situation and to frame it in a way that people see the positives and the learning opportunities. But people will only do that if they feel psychologically safe, if they feel they're not going to be criticised or viewed as somehow inefficient or ineffective. And that doesn't just happen. So leaders have to find ways of helping people to understand that it's okay to experiment. It's okay if you fail, as long as you fail quickly and learn from it. and actually encourage the kind of talking about failure and the communication about failure that allows us to learn from failure. It's about learning to learn from failure. And one of Eddie Obeng's attributes, when going back to his model, when he talks about when you're in a type of project where you have to learn how to do things, part of the time you spend at the beginning of the project is, as a team, learning how to learn from failure, learning about learning. And Amy also points out that as teams, you're often working with other teams, so you are spanning boundaries. Now, one of the things we know about teams is teams form an own identity, and it becomes them and us. And that's even more so if it's going across company cultures or country cultures. And so one of the skills you need to learn is the ability to break down those barriers. And that, again, is about taking time to notice, taking time to pay attention, taking time to think about what are the differences that need to be addressed, and taking time to encourage people to do that. So again, this slow principle of what's the right pace to move at, what is it we have to do, what are the things we need to notice, how do our eyes have to be open in order to see what's happening, how do we have to be in the present in order to pay attention to what's happening around us and to do the right things. All of these ways of being come into play. Now, it's not the kind of thing you would normally expect to learn in a transition program. It's not complex planning, it's not risk management, it's not financial planning. It's about ways of being, but these are the things that make a real difference. How we are as team members or leaders, how we are dealing with the fact that we're inevitably doing difficult, complex things, and how we respond. And for me, the book I've been reading about the slow movement, it's the same thing. It's about asking questions and opening up the eyes of people to the thing they believe, that fast is always better, may not be the right answer, and there may be other ways of doing things. I've put the culture map in there as well, because that's another book that we draw upon. And coincidentally, the one example I pulled out of that, because it's about time and pace, is that we have countries where time is considered plentiful and time is scarce. So Western countries, time is scarce. Busy, busy, busy. Got to have my Outlook, diary packed with meetings, because there's not enough time to do everything, and I have to be rushing here, there, and everywhere. Whereas we know that other countries, anyone who's done outsourcing work in India, for example, time is plentiful. Things will happen when they happen, and it will be okay. And there can be so many misunderstandings if you don't understand the differences in culture. And I think time is plentiful is another aspect of the circular time culture that we were talking about earlier on. So Hannah, in her module, will spend a lot of time looking at what are the differences between country cultures, how do we understand those, and then how do we adapt our pace and ways of working in order to respect those. I'm going to move fairly quickly next. We've only got 15 minutes left of the scheduled time, and I want to allow time. Yes, Gosha. So teaming is about execution as learning versus execution as efficiency. Thank you. Yes, it's all about learning. But one aspect of that is the fact that that takes time, and it's about moving at the right pace. When we look at leadership on TMA, we're looking at people-focused leadership. So we're looking at a style of leadership which is the leader as coach. That your principal role as the leader on the project is not to plan everything, it's not to tell everyone what to do. Your principal role as the leader is to allow the people in your team to be the best they can be as individuals and as a team. And your job is to take time to develop the individuals and to develop the team, and to do that through a coaching and a mentoring style. So we have a weekend devoted to the leader as coach, where I teach some basic fundamental coaching skills, and we spend a lot of time coaching each other. So if you come on TMA, on that module, you will be coached by other people, and you will learn to coach other people yourself, and you'll do it. You'll learn it by doing it, because that's the best way to learn how these things work. But again, it's about taking time, Again, it's about being aware of the differences between people as well as the similarities, and it's moving at the right pace. We also look at a model we brought in. One of the case studies we look at is from the Chile mine rescue. This was, I can't remember the exact year now, about 20, somewhere in the last 20 years, there was a mine disaster in Chile where a number of miners were trapped a long way underground. Nobody knew if they were alive, and nobody knew where they were, if they were. And there was a big rescue program to first of all find them and then to get them out of the mine. The leader of that program was a brilliant leader. And one of the lessons that was learned from that is that good leaders have to be able to do two almost opposite things. So I've been talking about the leader as an enabler, the leader who allows his team to develop as individuals. And yeah, that's a really important thing. But sometimes you do have to be a more directive leader. I used to do it myself. You know, sometimes something happens and you have to say, okay, we have a bit of an issue here. We need to move fast. Just for now, I'm going to tell you what to do. And let's do it, and let's get through this, and then we'll come back and we'll enable. And what the model says, there are things you need to do as a leader. You need to envision, in other words, convince people of the things that need to happen. You need to get them engaged on that. You need to bring them in and get them aligned with what you need to do. And then when they're engaged, you need them to execute. And you need to be doing that in two different ways. When you need to direct, there is a version of those three things, which is about basically directing and telling people what to do. And when you need to enable, it's about getting out of the way and different ways of allowing people to do their best when you're letting them take the initiative. A part of the skill of the leader is knowing which one you need to do at which time. And again, that's a topic that we cover on TMA. So how is slow relevant here? Well, if you think about it, enabling is about time is not our most important thing here. Quality of outcome, effectiveness of our thinking is the most important thing. And we probably need to move slower to do that. So taking the time, it's slow transition management. Directing is usually because time is of the essence. And so pace really is important. So for now, we're going to, the right pace for us to move at is not slow, it's fast. But we're still going to do it according to slow principles, in that we're going to move fast because it's the right pace, and we're going to do it in the right way and with the right controls in place. So it's not hurry, it's considered pace. So again, for me, the principles of the slow movement absolutely apply to transition management. And there are always more questions. So this is really, I'm at the end of what I'm going to say now. And what I've tried to do is give you a flavour of some of the subjects that we cover, why I'm excited by finding this book and this idea of the slow movement, and why I'm planning to investigate it more and to bring it into my teaching in the next TMA module. And that's because I see clear similarities of purpose and of outcome between what the slow movement is about achieving: effective, efficient, healthy, glorious living. Okay, and if we can do that in our transition programs, then that for me is a win-win situation. But there are always more questions. I'm only scratched the surface on this, and the reason I've only done it in this talk is because I'm only at the beginnings of investigating this. But there are always more questions. When you come to TMA, we will teach you some things. We'll do it mostly by asking you questions. And my view of success is if you go away from TMA having more questions than you had when you came in, we will have done our work. But what you will do is you will be better prepared to find the answers to those questions for yourself or through others. Okay, that's my talk. Any questions, any observations, any thoughts? Shemek or Gosha, is anything you want to add in?
just put the case, the link to the case. So if you are interested, you can read it. And also because we share it with other participants, but we share as well with other leaders during other sessions we run. And that's a relief for people, especially when we have agility, agile, and everyone should be just enabler, yeah? So you just like, and they question it a lot. So for many leaders, that is a relief that they can be both. Some situations, so it's more like situational leadership, so they can be direct, more direct, and in other cases, they can be enabler more. So that's my experience from the work, from meeting other leaders. So it's a great case, and I recommend it as well.
Okay. So what we try to do on TMA, we try to inform you, but we try to excite you, and we try to intrigue you. What we want you to do is to know more, but we want you to be more curious, and we want you to be more capable of going and finding your own solutions and doing your own research. From TMA, you will come in.
Kasia?
Kasia, yeah?
Sorry.
Yes, could you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for your presentation. To be honest, I have learned slightly something to my question, which I would like to ask, but let me ask, maybe it can summarize somehow, maybe this meeting for others, because I've got doubts what to choose, yes, or to go with the TMA program, or maybe to choose another program offered by Kozminski Academy. For example, there is another program for change management by, I don't know how to pronounce, but the abbreviation is a PROSCI program for change management. And I would like to know, in your opinion, what are the advantages of the TMA program? Okay. Why we should choose this one program?
Okay, I think you should choose the right program for you. And so that in part depends upon how you think and how you work as an individual. What we will give you is what will we try and do? We will give you some knowledge. So you're going to get a lot of knowledge about project management and change management techniques. So I suspect what we teach and what that program teaches in that respect will be very similar. But what we also like to recognize is that good transition managers, thank you, Finley, good transition managers, you're going to be presented with situations which you've never seen before. You're going to be presented with complex problems. So we want to teach you to think for yourself. Okay, we want you to have the confidence to know that even if you don't know the answers, what you do know is how to yourself or through your team find the answers, and you know how to manage stakeholders and manage people's expectations so that you have the time to do that. Okay, so a lot of the time what we're going to be doing, as well as teaching you, is we're going to be asking you questions and challenging you and getting you to think for yourself and find your solutions. I don't know how the other program works, but how we work, it comes down to this question of curiosity. Okay, we will give you the basic knowledge that you need. We will pose difficult questions. We will work with you, and you will work with others to answer those questions. And as I say, at the end of the day, for me, if you go away from TMA having more questions than you came in with, we've done our job, because we've made you curious and eager to learn more, and there is always more to learn. Shemek, have you got any thoughts on an answer to Kasia's question?
So I'm not familiar with the other program as well, although PROSCI is a recognized brand, obviously, for the change management. In regards to our program, I would say that the beauty of it is that it's very comprehensive and looking from different perspectives. So you will be having people finding those ideas about the slow movement and the teaming and all the other things that Mike and Gosia mentioned. You will have professionals that are working and implementing those ideas in the businesses, not as consultants, but as actual professionals that are driving those, testing those areas in their business, and then they are able to share, okay, did it work for me or not? And then discuss it with others, how we could apply that. Right, and then you would have this perspective of looking from the visual and creative side of things, and making sure that it's not only about this hard skill set and about the tools that we use, but also how we use them and how creatively we approach to implementing things. So I think that all together, those things give you quite a holistic approach to transitions.
Yeah.
So for me, if you look for tools and techniques and knowledge, choose the other program. If you would like to go through a personal transition and discover something about yourself and change your perspective, change your mindset, and be able to create the environment that people think for themselves, for example, people feel safe and people are creative, engaged. So I think that's the best program. Yeah. So it's more than knowledge, tools, and techniques. That's a kind of transition you will move through. And most of participants, we can really recognize. They can recognize they have moved through something really exciting, and we can see it in the end of the program when they present their journey.
But again, I say it has to be right for you, and only you know how you think and how you work. Yeah. But yes, I mean, as Gosia says, I don't know the other course, but it may be that what it will teach you is how to do change management. Okay, for us, what we're talking about is the being of transition and change management. Okay, it's a personal thing. It's how you will change as a person, which will make you a successful manager of transition and change. It's not only about doing for us. It's about being as well. It is a personal transition. If that appeals to you, come on our course. If you are happy with and what you're really looking for is tools and techniques, do the other one. And that's fine. You know, it's got to be right for you. You've got to move at your right pace.
And you will get tools and techniques as well. We are, as Przemek mentioned, we are practitioners. So we are not only teachers. Yeah, we do the projects, we do the programs, we lead the transitions, huge transformational and transitional projects. So
does that answer your question?
Yes. Partially yes, partially no. I think that I need to digest this, but thank you for this quite comprehensive reply from both of you. And if I can have another question, maybe a shorter one, because I would like to know.
Don't forget, we are slow. We have all the time in the world. It's fine. Okay, fine. So I would like to ask about the final thesis, because this is the point which makes me scary slightly. And I would like to know, how do you imagine what you would like to receive from participants as a final thesis? So we encourage the students to start thinking from the very beginning about what they might want to be saying, because it comes around very quickly. But what we do is, between the team, we will act as mentors for students. And so when you're starting to work on your final thesis, you know, if you were to get me as a mentor, okay, you would have access to me. We could talk about what your content will be. We'll talk about how you're researching that. We'll talk about how you're presenting it. So we effectively coach and guide you through the process. You have to do the work. You have to do the thinking. But we're there to support you and make sure that what you come up with is going to be a thesis that's going to get you the best outcome. it's not a long thesis, but you need to show originality, and you need to. What we're not looking for is for you to feed back everything we've taught you on the course. We want you to show how you've taken some of what we've taught you and how you've made it yours. So ideally, if you've actually used it in a real situation, or if you've had thoughts about it and you want to take it further. So we've had theses where people have come back and said, yeah, I was really interested in this, and I've done some research, and my research is suggesting this, and we've gone, that's really good. We'll take that and we'll do that in the course next time round. So, you're growing the body of knowledge as well. But you will be coached and supported in order to make sure that what you present is going to be a good thesis. But we do expect some originality, and we want you to make it your own.
Okay.
Anything, Shemek, or? No, I'm taking it as a no. Okay. Any other questions? Can I say thank you for listening then? I'll ask Gosha in a minute to sort of sum up and what next. Can I say thank you for listening to me though? It's how do I mark myself? I think I did I did about a 5 out of 10 for me. I think I covered everything I wanted to cover. I wanted to excite you and show you what it's like in the room, and the excitement of me challenging you and asking you questions and throwing ideas out and getting things back. It's quite hard to do that over Zoom. Can I thank you for people who have asked questions? Your interaction has made it a lot easier. But come and see me in the room. It's much more fun. It's much more dynamic. We have a good time. Hopefully, I'm looking forward to meeting some of you on the course. And I'm looking forward to asking you some difficult questions and giving you some great thinking to do. Gosha, do you want to kind of sum up what next and just take us to the end? No, she's gone. Okay. Oh no, she's back. Are you there, Gosha?
Sorry, can I just add one? It's more.
Of course you can. Yeah.
Technical question about the organizational side of it. Is there a plan to do online meetings, or will be done in person? Because I know you mentioned that you're prepared to run it online, but yeah. What's the plan for the moment?
Kasia, can you answer that, Kasia, or?
So there will be 6 sessions in the first semester, with most of them being on the campus, and with 2 sessions conducted online.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think that's it. So I hope we've given you some understanding of what it's going to be like. I hope we've given you a flavour of what it will be like to work with us. If you have any further questions, Kasia, I guess they can feed them through you. I know I'm happy to take any further questions. They can be emailed to me, and I'm sure Gosha would be as well. We'd love to see you on the course. We'd love to excite you and to inform you and challenge you. What happens next, Kasia?
So maybe I would like to remind you that the recruitment process is open till 15th of February. So if you haven't registered yet, you still have chance to do it. And maybe there are any other questions from the participants?
If you do have questions, if you're uncertain before you go through the while you're going through the recruitment process, talk to us. Contact the university, email a question in. We're more than happy to do that. We want you to make the right decision. Okay, we want you to come on the course because it's the right course for you, and because we're the right people with the right ways of thinking. And if the fit's not there, that's perfectly okay. But we'd like the chance to talk to you and to share our thinking and hopefully encourage you that we're the right people to take you forward on the next stage of your development.